Algebra 1 students, I realized that we kind of rushed through this topic in class because we didn't have a lot of time left in class, and some people were also absent or had to leave early for sports. So I wanted to do kind of a full overview of section 4.8 to make sure you had a chance to digest it or go back and see the examples fully worked out. So this will just be kind of a full lesson on this section. So the first thing is parallel and perpendicular lines are just two ways to have lines related to other lines. So parallel just means they have the same slope. So when two things are parallel, when you draw them, they never cross. So if you draw these on a graph, they would have different y-intercepts, but they would have the same slope. So the idea that two things are parallel is just another way of saying that they have the same slope. So you want to kind of lock that definition of parallel in your mind. Coincident is something we won't use very often, but this is when the line is actually the same line twice. So it's kind of like parallel lines, but if they have the same y-intercept, they're actually right on top of each other. So coincident lines, when you graph them, are two lines that are exactly right on top of each other, and they would have the exact same equation, same y-intercept and same slope. So like I say, we won't have that happen very often. Usually we'll have two parallel lines that are separate or perpendicular lines that are crossing. Then our third one is perpendicular lines. And so perpendicular means crossing at a right angle. So like if you draw the graph, they're going to intersect, and that'll be a 90-degree angle or right angle where they cross. So right angle means 90 degrees. And that's like visually how they cross, but mathematically in algebra, we're concerned with the slope. And so when two things are perpendicular, they have what's called negative reciprocal slopes. So that means if one of them is positive, the other is negative. And the steeper one of them is, the flatter the other one is. So a reciprocal means flip it over. So like 5 over 1 becomes 1 over 5. 2 over 3 becomes 3 over 2. So you just flip the fraction. If it's not a fraction, you can just write it as over 1 and then flip it. And then the negative piece means change the sign. So if it was positive, make it negative. If it was negative, make it positive. The symbol we'll use will be M and then a little parallel symbol for parallel lines, and then M with a little perpendicular symbol. So perpendicular symbol is a little upside down T to just show that they're perpendicular. So the next thing is, what do you do? Let me hit clear. Clear. What do you do when you have a problem and they tell you find a parallel line or find a perpendicular line? How do you do it? So it's always a three-step process. And the process is basically the same for any kind of line that you're trying to find. In order to graph a line, you have to find a slope and you have to find a point, and you could put the point and the slope together into point slope form. So what does that look like? The first thing you always want to do is find the slope. So sometimes the slope is given to you. Like if the equation is given to you as y equals mx plus b, then getting the slope is really easy. You just look and you see what was the m value. But sometimes they might give you two coordinate points. And so you can get the slope using rise over run in a graph, or using like y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So somehow they're going to give you either points or a line or an equation, and you can figure out the slope based on whatever they gave you. Then, if the line that you're trying to find is parallel, then you're just going to use the same slope. Keep it the same. If you are trying to find a line that's perpendicular, then once you find the slope of the original line that's given to you, you have to do the negative reciprocal. So you're either going to find the slope and keep it, or find the slope and take the negative reciprocal. And the way that you find the slope just different depending on the problem. So you might need to use the slope equation. You might need to count rise over run. You might just look and see what it is if they give it to you in y equals mx plus b form. Or what if they gave you standard form, like ax plus by equals c? Then you might have to convert from standard form into slope intercept form in order to see what that slope is. So that's why we've been practicing converting forms back and forth and finding slopes. Okay, once you have the slope, you're halfway done. The other thing you need to graph a line or to get the equation of a line is you need a point. You need to know one point that's on the line. So how do you find the point? Again, every problem is different. Sometimes they just tell you what the point is as part of the problem. It will just say, find a line through this point. That's the easiest scenario you can be in if they just give you the point. But sometimes it says through the same x-intercept or through the same y-intercept or through the midpoint. And so they're telling you some information about the point, but not giving you the actual coordinates. So you'll have to do some work. You'll have to solve an equation or figure out what is the actual coordinates of the point. And how you do that depends on the specific problem. So once we start doing the examples, we'll look at a couple different cases that it could be where you have to find the point in order to use it. Once you have the point and you have the slope, you take those two things together and you plug them into the equation for point slope form. Since you have a point and you have a slope, then for sure, I hope it's obvious at this point that that means you use point slope form. So that's going to be y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And you'll plug in the m value that you got, and you'll plug in the x1 and the y1 from the coordinate point that you got. And at that point, you're basically done. You have the equation of the line. Sometimes a problem might say, okay, convert it to standard form or convert it to slope-intercept form. So maybe you do that afterward. But in terms of finding the line that's parallel or perpendicular, at that point, you're done. Okay, so let's move on and look at some examples. Almost all the examples are going to say, find a line that's parallel or perpendicular to a given line, and then it will tell you what the given line is. So here's our first example. Find a line that's parallel. Okay, so that means the same slope. So m parallel, it's going to be the same slope as the line that we have. And the line they have is in y equals mx plus b form. So we can see the slope is 3. So parallel to 3 is just 3. So we know that our slope is going to be 3, and it has to go through the point 5 comma -1. So this is the easiest possible problem you can get. We know the slope, we know the point, we can already just write the answer. So it's going to be y minus y1, but remember y1 is a negative. This is y1, so it turns into y plus 1 because we're subtracting a negative. And then we put in the slope, 3. And then we have x minus x1, and x1 is 5. It doesn't ask us to convert it into a different form, so we are actually just done. We got the equation of the line, and it's parallel to this line, and it goes through this point. So that's it. You're done with that one. Scroll down. Okay, we can do these two. All right, next one is again parallel, but this time it's parallel to a line that's in standard form. So to get the slope, I can't just look at that and know what the slope is. I'm going to need to solve the equation and put it into y equals mx plus b form in order to get the slope. So first we're going to subtract 3x on both sides. That's going to give us negative 4y equals negative 3x plus 10. Next up, I'm going to divide by -4. And remember the golden rule, I'm going to divide everything by -4. Okay, so now my line is y equals, the negatives cancel out on the 3 and the 4, so I just have 3/4 x. Here, 10 over -4 will reduce to -5/2. So this is not my answer. This is just rearranging the line that they gave us. Then I want to be parallel to it. So if I want to be parallel to it, I'm going to take this slope value and I'm just going to use it. So the slope that I want for my parallel line is going to be 3/4 because it's parallel, so it's the same slope. And I rearranged the equation they give us into a form that allowed me to see easily what is that slope. Now I need to know what point my line has to go through. And again, it doesn't tell us the actual coordinates of the point, but it does say use the same x-intercept. Okay, so I need to take this equation and I'm going to need to find the x-intercept. But again, we've done that many, many times. To find an x-intercept, we're going to set y equal to 0. So I plug in a 0 in place of the y, and we get 3x minus 0 equals 10. Great, divide by 3, divide by 3, and I got x equals 10 over 3. But remember, that's an x-intercept, so it's actually a coordinate point. So it's going to be 10 over 3, comma 0. And that's important because when I'm writing an equation in point slope form, I have to have a point and I have to have a slope. So now we're going to take these two things and we're going to bring them together to write the answer. So it's going to be y minus 0 equals 3/4. That's the slope. And then x minus 10/3. And then for completeness, we want to simplify, like reduce fractions and don't write things that you don't need to write. So this little minus 0 here, we really don't want to write that in a final answer. So we'll rewrite the same thing just without the minus 0. So it's just going to be y equals 3/4 x minus 10/3. Again, we don't have to distribute. We don't have to convert it into slope-intercept form or standard form because its problem just said find the equation of the line. It didn't say we had to have it in a specific form. So that's the answer for that one. Okay, next up, now we're going perpendicular, and we want to be perpendicular to this line through the same y-intercept. So we're going to have to find the y-intercept, and that will give us our point. We're going to have to find the slope of this, and then we're going to have to take the negative reciprocal. So same process as above, just with slight tweaks to it. So how do I find the slope of this line? First, I have to solve for y. So minus 5x minus 5x. So negative y, that's left over here, negative y, equals negative 5x plus 10. Okay. Now I'm going to multiply the whole thing by negative 1 to cancel out the negative sign. So y equals 5x plus 10. Now, my slope is 5, right? I hope we can all see that pretty easily. But I want not a slope of 5. I want a slope which is perpendicular. So I can say my slope, which is m perpendicular, is going to be the negative reciprocal. So the negative reciprocal of 5 means flip it over and change the sign. So my slope is going to be negative 1/5. Now I need to find the y-intercept. Again, to find a y-intercept, I'm going to set x equal to 0 and plug that into this equation right here. So I'll have 0 minus y equals 10. So again, I got to get rid of the minus sign. So divide by negative 1 or multiply by negative 1, and I get y equals negative 10. So my y-intercept is 0, comma, negative 10 as a coordinate point. So once I know my coordinate point and my slope, I can put these together into point slope form. So it's going to be y minus y1, and the minus signs will cancel out and give me y plus 10 equals my slope, which is negative 1/5. And then here it's going to be, well, it would be x minus 0, right? Because you can see I'm going to put an x minus 0. So like before, if I have a 0 there, I don't really need to write it. So instead of putting x minus 0 and then rewriting it without the 0, we can just put x. Again, there would be a minus 0. We're not writing it on purpose because we know that we don't need the 0 in our final answer. And there we have it. The equation of the line in point slope form through the same y-intercept with a negative reciprocal slope because it's perpendicular. Okay, so hopefully you're getting the hang of this. It's always the same. We got to find a point. We got to find a slope. We got to write the equation in point slope form. If it's parallel, we use the same slope. If it's perpendicular, we use the negative reciprocal slope. So there's just one more example to do, and this one will be cool because it will guide us through a midpoint, which is a different thing that you might have to find, but it follows the same pattern. Find the slope, find the point, write the equation. All right, next, it doesn't give us a line, it gives us 2 points. So it says, find a perpendicular to this line. Well, I need to find the slope of this line. Cool. So I'm just going to use my equation, y2 minus y1. So 2 minus 4, that's this 2 minus this 4, divided by negative 2 minus 6. That's this negative 2 minus this 6. Make sure you put the y's on top and the x's on the bottom. So in the top, 2 minus 4 is negative 2. And negative 2, take away 6 more, is negative 8. And reduce that, the negatives cancel, and the 2 over 8 reduces to 1 over 4. So the slope of my old original line is 1/4. But again, I want something which is perpendicular to that. So I'm going to say my slope perpendicular is the negative reciprocal. So flip it over. It's not 1 over 4. It becomes a 4 over 1, which is 4. And I also put on the minus sign. So my negative reciprocal slope is negative 4. So I'm going to box that because that's now half of what I need. Remember, I need a point and I need a slope. So that's how I get my slope. Now, how do I get my point? It's not the x-intercept, it's not the y-intercept, and it's not a value they gave us. Instead, the point, it says, is a midpoint. So all a midpoint means is it's in the middle of these. So you got to find halfway between a 6 and a negative 2. The way you find halfway between them is either just think about it or add them together and divide it in half. So if I go 6 plus negative 2, and then I cut it in half, 6 plus negative 2 is 4. Half of 4 is 2. So the x-coordinate of my midpoint is 2. And now for the y-coordinate, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to say what's halfway between a 4 and a 2. And here, without showing any of the work, I think you can all hopefully agree halfway between 4 and a 2 is a 3. So my point that I'm going to use is going to be 2, comma 3. That's the midpoint of the 2 points that they gave us. And as before, once I have my slope and once I have my point, I put them together in point slope form. So y minus y1 is y minus 3. Plug in your m value, which is negative 4. And then go x minus x1, which is 2. And we don't have to convert it. That's the answer in point slope form. We've got the slope, we've got the point, and we've got the equation. So the overall idea of this section, like I said, is a 3-step process. Find the slope, find the point, and then plug them into point slope form. And if you have any trouble with any of this, that's okay. I'm here to help. You can come to office hours every Friday afternoon. I'll have lots of time to devote to helping you one-on-one. You can also rewatch this video, go through the examples a couple times, ask your parents to help. Come on Monday for a math tutoring session, or Wednesday or Friday for my office hours. So you have lots of chances to get help. And I'll see you next class where we can go over this and you can ask questions. Thanks again for watching.